to my sewing room. The topic of the show today is ribbon manipulation, and we have some absolutely beautiful projects to share with you. The first project I would like to share with you is this absolutely beautiful lampshade. Do you notice the wonderful ribbon manipulation and roses at the top with ribbons coming down? And this form of ribbon manipulation is box pleating, something that some of you are very familiar with. Now then, look at this little lampshade, which has more pleated ribbon manipulation and the cute little polka dot ribbons in green and purple and blue. We even have a hat with ribbon manipulation on it. I'd like to tell you about a very special guest I have with me today, my dear friend Kamala Nitsky from the Ribbonry in Perrysburg, Ohio. Kamala, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Martha.
This is a beautiful, beautiful wedding dress. I wonder if you would tell us a little bit about it.
I would love to tell you about it. This is a very simple, contemporary style, but it's really a recreation of a very Victorian gown. And you can see that it's trimmed with some of the flowers that we've learned on another segment, the cabochon rose, but it's really a movable motif, the type of thing that you can take off and put back on and save as an heirloom. And there are many places, as you can see on this gown, on this damask gown, that you could decorate with something such as this. And it's just one form of ribbon manipulation. There are many, many other designs you could use in this gown.
You know what, Cam? I think more and more brides really do want a handmade gown. And when you have something like these wonderful ribbons that really makes it special, I just don't think any amount of money could buy a gown that's quite this beautiful.
I totally agree.
And you know what? I would like to ask Cam if she would go to our technique boards and explain to us maybe even 2 types of ribbon manipulation so you can make wonderful things like these projects.
Here are some techniques of ribbon manipulation that are some of my favorites. In fact, some of them used to decorate the borders of court gowns back in the 1850s and even far before that during the time of the King Louis. The first one we're going to look at is the serpentine design. And we're working with a 2-inch ribbon, but it doesn't matter which width of ribbon or what type of ribbon that you used. We happen to be using a pleated ribbon. The first thing to do is to decide how wide you'd like each ruffle, and we've determined that 5 inches is enough for this ribbon, usually about 2 to 3 times the width of the ribbon. And we have sewn along the top edge a gathering stitch, and then we drop right down to the bottom selvage, sew 5 inches along the bottom, go along the top and sew. Now each time, let's go down to the next example, we are pulling up those threads so that each piece is gathered as we go along and begins to look just like this. To have our examples look like this picture right here, we have just flipped down the top and we end up with another type of motif that we can use to decorate a box or a lampshade or even a hat. Now right here we have an example of an antique ribbon that is sort of a copy or a mimic of the same technique that we're learning. Down in the bottom you can see some jacquard ribbons and see just how beautiful this technique is in almost any kind of ribbon. Let's go ahead and look at our next technique, pleating. This is box pleating, and it really lends itself very well to some of our projects. It originated in the 1850s with the invention of the sewing machine. In fact, the first box is about 1 inch wide, and usually to decipher the width, we make it no wider than the width of the ribbon and no narrower than half the width of the ribbon. So you can see I've gone along and I have a half of pleat on one side, a half on the other, and I go along. And here's another way to make this simple for you, and that's by using a gauge that's a 1/2 inch wide, putting it in place and just folding around it. Here's an example of 1/2 inch width box pleats just to show you how nice they look. Now what you can do with those boxes is pull up the center with your needle, and you can design all types of beautiful little motifs. Here's an example of the narrower look. Now I wanted to let you look also at some examples of ribbon that has been folded 2 and 3 times. This particular motif has been box pleated in the same technique as above, but it's been pleated 3 times so that we have kind of a ruffled effect. And we've actually just stitched along the top edge instead of in the middle. This motif to the right has only been pleated 2 times and has been stitched up at the top also. And you can do things like popping up the bottom and just create your own special motif. Down below you can see how wonderful stripes adapt themselves to this particular technique. Now let's go and try this out on some of our lampshades and other little ideas for you.
Cam has some of the most beautiful techniques to share with you. Cam?
Thank you very much, Martha. I think we'll begin with 2 designs, the serpentine design used on a lampshade. So let's take a look at our first design. Take a close look and let me show you another example of the serpentine. Okay? Now I'm going to show you how simple it is to plan and to make this design. First of all, you can use any width ribbon that you like, and it's just a matter of deciding how wide you would like each ruffle, because that's all this is. So go ahead and make a sample first ruffle, pull it up and see if it's wide enough, or go no more than 2 to 3 times the width of the ribbon that you're using. You can see that I have stitched just a running stitch along the lower selvage, and then I jumped right up to the top because this is a serpentine, and stitched along the top. Now here you can see what happens when I pull that up. It makes this design top, bottom, and you just go till the end of the ribbon that way. Let me put this aside, and I'm going to show you another design that would be wonderful used on a pillow. This time we're going to look at some of our pleating techniques, and I'm going to bring this little pillow over so you can better see how we can use it because it's a dark colored ribbon. This would be a lovely decoration used on any pillow or as a hat band, and it's nothing more than single box pleats. All I'm going to do, and I think I will just go ahead and show you right on the pillow, is take a 1/2 inch pleat, and you can measure that right on a measuring stick if you like, or use a gauge. But this is so simple that I've gotten used to doing it just by hand. I just make a pleat, and I go ahead and I stitch right through the middle. Now when you're done with all this stitching, you can go ahead and use it on your machine and straighten the stitching. So there's 1/2 of a pleat, or 1/2 of a box. Now go ahead and add the second 1/2 inch box. These boxes can be any width, but the rule of thumb is that they shouldn't really be any more than the width of your ribbon, or as little as half the width. So now I'm going to come up again with my needle and thread, just sort of tacking in place, 1 stitch to hold it in place. Now after you've completed a whole ribbon, and you can determine how much ribbon you need by just measuring your box and multiplying it times the desired finished length, then you can do things like going back and pulling up one side and sewing it down, or pulling up both sides, stitching them together. In fact, I'd like to show you a little lampshade where we've used this technique, and you'll see very clearly how lovely this design is. This is a double box pleat. In other words, we've pleated 2 times on top of each other, pulled back only one side, and then we've even decorated it with a little pearl, as well as some of our flower motifs. This is something that can be used in such wonderful ways. I think you'll really have a good time with this.
Oh, Cam, thank you so much. Those are absolutely beautiful techniques. I believe most of us could do that. And now then, following our ribbon motif theme for the show, I have a beautiful, beautiful little doll dress who is wearing a pinafore with just some wonderful ribbon applications on it. My little doll looks a little like Alice in Wonderland in her pretty little pinafore. Look at this precious dress. The little pinafore, by the way, this is a linen dress. The little pinafore has beautiful decorative stitching in blue, and this little trim here is just store-bought trim, which is absolutely beautiful. It's a little white ribbon with blue ribbons on it. Traveling down the dress, I find more feather stitching, a little bit of this trim just straight stitched down, a beautiful decorative stitch, some more trim, some more feather stitch, and the lace on the bottom is attached with a beautiful wing needle honeycomb stitch. Now, the techniques on this dress are really very easy, as all of my techniques are easy. Let me just share with you how that little pinafore skirt was put together. First of all, I trace off the designs on my fabric. In this case, it was Swiss Batiste. Next comes the ribbons. Now, I used that other little ribbon, but this is a little bit more clear on the television camera, so I've used this dark blue ribbon and I have pinned it. But what else you might want to do is just use your liquid pins and put it in place. You can just kind of glue it down and then simply straight stitch it down. Now, that certainly is easy enough. Next, using a stabilizer, of course, anytime you do decorative feather stitching, I have beautiful feather stitching at the top and at the bottom. The next step is an absolutely gorgeous decorative stitch that goes right down the middle of that piece. Now then, let me just show you how easy it is to stitch that decorative stitch when you have a wonderful sewing machine that does all these beautiful decorative stitches. Please do enjoy your decorative stitches on your sewing machine, and doll clothes and children's clothes and home decorating and crafts and quilts. If you're so fortunate as to have a machine that does these beautiful stitches, please do enjoy them, because that is really part of the joy of sewing, is truly utilizing these wonderful sewing machines. Now then, let me just show you how pretty this stitch is. A beautiful decorative stitch right down the middle with the ribbons. Now, speaking of ribbons, let me share with you the final little technique that we used. All right, this cute little decorative ribbon, which has ribbons stitched on it, which can be purchased at any fabric store or a lot of fabric stores, we simply stitched it down right here, came in and stitched it down. This is around the pinafore, came across, and that is what makes the little pinafore. Once again, you can use your pins to keep it in place or use your liquid pins and just kind of glue it in place. Now, speaking of pinafores, we have a beautiful child's pinafore for this series also. And you know, since we're talking about ribbons for this show, we had to show you a beautiful ribbon pinafore. Looking at the top of this pinafore is a beautiful purchased ribbon. It looks like it's 5 strips, but it's not. It's just one piece of ribbon which has been mitered. By the way, this dress is a wonderful linen fabric, not even a handkerchief linen, just a beautiful heavier linen. Here at the skirt, I have 3 rows of feather stitch, another darling ribbon which has been mitered, and some more feather stitch. I'd like to share with you how easy it is to do this particular skirt. First of all, I'm going to draw my grids on the skirt. I have this horizontal and vertical grids, and then the ribbon can be shaped exactly the way you shape laces. Okay, let's go along here. I go up and down in between those grids. Now, when I come to the shaping, I'm going to put a pin at the top, a pin at the bottom, and as you know with lace shaping, fold it back on itself, and I'm going to just kind of run this pin up in there to hold the ribbon. I probably won't do it very well standing at this angle on television since you're watching, but anyway, you get the idea. Then I have my ribbon shaped, and oh, I have another wonderful trick to show you right here. After the ribbon is shaped, now let's go along here. I have the feather stitching, the machine feather stitching, the shaped ribbon all along the skirt, and the bottom row of feather stitching. There's a little trick I want to share with you. I put the hem in. Let me hold this up and let you see. The bottom row of feather stitching also stitches in the hem, which means it's very easy to come in here and just trim away the excess fabric, and you have a beautiful scalloped hem. Now let me go back and show you the front. You see this row of stitching right here? That actually holds in the hem of the dress, and you talk about an easy way to hem a beautiful little linen pinafore. I just love this technique, and that double hem really is pretty on batiste. In this case, it was linen. I think you'll enjoy that technique. And oh, you talk about an easy hem. It is easy. Well, more ribbon. This time we're going to have a silk ribbon embroidery stitch, the fly stitch. Today I'm so pleased to have as my guest Beverly Sheldrick from New Zealand. Beverly is the author of the silk ribbon book entitled Colonial Inspirations, and she is also a guest designer for So Beautiful magazine. Beverly, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you for inviting me to be on your wonderful show. Now today I would like to show your ladies a very lovely iris. It's a very simple iris, but very, very effective, and you can see on this little piece I have here how lovely it is. Now to do it is very, very easy. What you've got to think of, it's a fly stitch, but instead of the normal fly stitch, we're going to just torture it a wee bit so that it's not in quite its normal shape, and we are also then going to give it a pair of fallen wings. So here we go. We have here the first section where we have the fly stitch. The needle has gone in a little lower and a little closer than what you would normally do. And we have, instead of having a long tail, we just have a small hillock. It is not pulled flat on the ground. We then come to the side and we are going to thread the needle through that little hillock and out the other side. And what you must be careful of, we do not want a pair of handlebars. So here we go. We're going to come up here like that. We're going to put the needle in here, as you can see, quite close and roughly halfway to 3/4 of the way up. And don't pull it too tight, ladies. That's another mistake that people make. We're then going to put in that small hillock. Come out to the side to put those fallen wings. Thread it through that little hillock and down again at a slightly different angle to the first wing. Now we're going to take our second needle to put in its stalk. Don't worry if at this point it looks like something the cat brought in, because it's when we put this stalk on. And do remember, the stalk needs to be at least twice the length of the flower itself. So when I put my needle in down here, it's going to be right down there, like that. If it twists, don't worry. Come up beside, over to here, and up over here, and down again, and we have an iris. Now don't you think that looks very pretty? And you can do, just if you need a very quick present, then put a wee frame around it and you have a charming picture. Now I have done that flower in 7mm ribbon. If you're doing it in 4, as I am here, then I will twist the ribbon like this, put it in like that, and that gives you a stalk which is very much finer than the bigger one here and in far better proportion to the size of the flower. So there we are, and once more we'll put in a couple of leaves and over to here and down. But never make them the same, particularly if you've got a clump, then make them all different and let the thread do what it wants to with these leaves. If it twists, it doesn't matter.
Beverly, that is just beautiful. I love those irises. Thank you so much. And now we have a wonderful craft for you. I really like to have crafts that are quick and easy and elegant, and things that could be made as gifts to give to almost everyone on your gift list. I believe today's craft falls in that category. We're calling this a ribbon message board. This board, I believe, is really elegant. It's used, we have pretty upholstery fabric on the back, and these are silk ribbons simply crossed over and attached to the board by using little thumbtacks. Now let me show you how this message board works. You just take any messages the family has. This one says, Martha called Joe. One of the children was at my house and I need to call Joe. And then here we have over here the dentist appointment for Joanna at 2 o'clock on Wednesday. And then whoever comes in the den first can simply run by and grab their message. And yet this is a very elegant piece to leave simply on the wall. Now you talk about easy to make. This is fun. This is a hot glue gun project for sure. We use a piece of foam core for the base. You can get that at any art supply place. Then I have a piece of quilting batting, a very thin batting right on top of this. And then I have a beautiful piece of upholstery with golds and pinks and reds. And actually you can use any color that goes with your decor or the decor of your friend you're giving this to. All right, next we're going to cover that and glue it on the back. Then I take silk ribbon and lay them across, and then there'll be another piece that comes across like this all the way across the board. And then it's very simple. At the points where the silk ribbon crosses, I'm simply going to take a thumbtack. This is an upholstery thumbtack, and I think I'm going to have to push very hard to get it in. There we go. And then do that all the way across the board. Now, after it's glued and after your ribbons are finished, I have some really pretty upholstery braid, and I will come down and go all the way around the board. Of course, this is going to be all tucked and glued under here. I'll take the upholstery braid and glue it all the way around the board as my decorative trim. Then the top, I have another piece of upholstery braid. This time it's kind of a cord, and I will stick it in the back before I glue the backing on the back. Now to finish this board, it's very simple. I have covered a piece of poster board simply with some white broadcloth, and I will glue it onto the back after everything else is all finished. And then I will have completed a craft that I believe will be enjoyed by nearly everyone you would like to make one for. And also, it's really inexpensive to make one of these. Next, I would like for you to come along with me to my attic. You know, I love to share with you this beautiful antique clothing collection that I've had the good fortune of being able to purchase over the last, I'd say, 15 or 18 years. And I have a beautiful dress for you today that has a very unusual ribbon treatment on it. Welcome to my attic. I have a beautiful dress today, which I think is about 1910 vintage, and it has silk ribbon on it. And it's hard to find dresses that have silk ribbon. So let me share this beautiful dress with you right now. The dress, it has a netting inset which goes down the front and real interesting release tucks on the shoulders on either side. That gives the fullness in the front. This netting inset has a really pretty silk ribbon bow at the top, and as we travel down you'll see a little scalloped edge on the edge of the netting, and this is something really interesting, and I've never seen this before. There is a piece of silk ribbon folded in half, and it is attached, well, first it's gathered and then attached to the cummerbund that goes around the dress. The sleeves are interesting too. There are a couple of tucks and then a little netting piece with a ruffle that is attached below the tucks on the sleeve. Let me share with you the back of this dress. It has a netting square collar with a little ruffle and the same scalloped edges. It has just beautiful tucks, release tucks all the way across the top of the back. And going down to the waistline is another, of course this silk ribbon goes all the way around to the back too. Isn't that a pretty way though of finishing off that dress? For our Sewing from the Heart today, we have a letter from Ruth Wolf of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Dear Martha, I enjoy your very informative lessons and especially the collection of beautiful antique dolls and clothing. Times have really changed. I am a member of the Three Rivers Quilters. We meet once a month in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have a service project once a year and donate baby quilts and lap robes which our members make. Our quilts have gone to Ronald McDonald House, Mom's House, West Penn Pediatric Unit, Kane Hospital Residence, and many others. When children go home from a facility, their precious quilts go with them. In the spring, we have a large judged quilt show, and with it an auction, boutique, and ready-to-wear fashion show made and modeled by our members. Thank you for sharing your talents. I'm just now learning to embroider with ribbon. Very truly yours, Ruth Wolf. Ruth, I'd just like to congratulate you and your members of the Three Rivers Quilters Group in Pittsburgh, and I'd like to thank you for all that you're doing for people who really appreciate those quilts. I'd like to thank you now for joining me in my sewing room, and I'd certainly like to invite you to join us next time.